Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 382, Once in a Mawile. The episode begins with Ash and the gang having a nice quiet lunch at a picnic table that, they always pack with them. I don't know how Brock keeps it in his backpack. And they were having a great meal. Although Ash finished first, because, he always did, because he was so fucking hungry all the time. And he was immediately keen to get some training in. So he asked May if she wanted to have a practice match with him, just for fun. May didn't seem very excited to battle right now, because she was too busy still eating her goddamn bread, as prepared by Brock. Max tried to persuade May to just fucking battle, but before he could, Brock stood up and told Ash that he would have a practice match with him in her place, because it's been a while since he'd actually battled. Ash was totally fine with this, as he just wanted to battle someone, period, and he was more than down to battle Brock since it'd been a long time since their last battle, so he thanked Brock for accepting and slid down a nearby hill that could act as a battlefield and sent out his Torkoal. Brock then also slides down the hill, and Ash tells him to use Lombre to give Torkoal a challenge, since he wanted as much training as possible against Pokemon that Torkoal was weak against. Brock agreed and sent out Lombre, shocking Max and May as they questioned Ash's judgment, since Brock's water-type Lombre, which knew a water gun, had a clear advantage against Torkoal, and they didn't understand why Ash would want to battle against a water type, even though, it was clear that he just wanted to get practice against types that he was weak against. Just as the battle was about to start, with Brock and Torkoal both telling the Pokemon to get ready, although Torkoal gets ready by exhausting smoke out of its nostrils to prepare itself. When Brock told Lombre to get ready, it simply just stood there, doing nothing, leading May to comment that Ash may have the advantage after all, since Lombre seemed like it didn't even really want to battle. Anyways, the battle then began, as Torkoal started with a body slam, but Lombre was very easily able to dodge the attack. So Torkoal runs up to Lombre to do a close-range flamethrower, but Lombre just leans back to dodge, making Max and May impressed with Lombre's dodging and defense capabilities, and Brock even started to brag about them, saying how awesome Lombre was. Torkoal then goes in to use a second body slam, but Torkoal simply misses once again, as Lombre dodges for a second time. And then Lombre launches a water gun straight into Torkoal, sending it flying back. Torkoal wasn't down though, as it survived the attack and started to exhaust smoke yet again, signifying it was ready for more, as Max and May complimented Torkoal on its endurance as it launched another flamethrower, but Lombre simply jumped away to dodge and sent out a whole bunch of Razor Leaves. Although Razor Leaves simply do nothing, as Torkoal simply withdraws into its shell, using Iron Defense, and the leaves just bounce off the shell. Once the Razor Leaves were gone, Ash had Torkoal come out of its shell and use an Overheat, which hit Lombre. And the Overheat was so red with power that, to everyone's shock, as Ash didn't even expect the Overheat to be that powerful, Lombre goes flying out into the distance, like almost blasting off like Team Rocket. Lombre happened to land in the middle of a nearby forest, and right as it was trying to get up off the ground, something grabbed onto its head, the maw of a Mawile. This Mawile belonging to a trainer who was trying to practice some techniques with it for something. Eventually, Ash and the gang had gone searching in the forest for Lombre, seeing it get blasted off into that area, and eventually they found Lombre, now simply just standing beside the Mawile as it had stopped gripping it with its maw, and there was also the Mawile's trainer standing beside them. As soon as Brock sees Mawile's trainer, he comments that she kind of had a similar design to Mawile in terms of the hair, and couldn't help himself but flirt with her, as he literally developed hearts in his eyes as usual, which also involved him introducing himself. The woman, uncomfortable, decided to introduce herself as well, hoping that would make Brock back off, and introducing himself as Samantha, although Brock didn't back off, simply calling it a beautiful name, so Max had to pull Brock away, as usual, and this allowed Ash and May to come up to Samantha and introduce themselves, along with Max. Max took more interest in the Mawile as opposed to Samantha, and asked if the Mawile was hers, which Samantha confirmed, and she also explained why her and her Mawile were just practicing some techniques when Lombre happened to fall next to them. Ash and the gang, including Brock as he got up, were all excited by Mawile, and Ash looked it up in his Pokédex to learn more about it. For some reason, despite Lombre just standing there showing no reaction to anything, as usual, Mawile seemed to take interest in Lombre as it waddled over to it and hugged its arm while rubbing against it. Seeing this, Samantha suggested that Mawile was probably flirting with Lombre and had a crush on it. Brock noticed that Lombre was just standing there doing nothing and not returning the affection to Mawile at all, so he quickly gave Lombre a nudge, telling it that it should return the affection. And it tries to show Lombre how it should return the affection by jumping towards Samantha and trying to flirt with her again, saying how awesome it was that their Pokemon were in love, and suggesting that they should be in love as well, although Max just pulls Brock away once more. Anyways, Mawile tries to cuddle with Lombre, but Lombre just pulls its arm out of Mawile's grip and waddles away, turning his back on her, leading Samantha to laugh at the awkward situation, admitting that it was clear that Lombre wasn't very interested in her Mawile. Well, Brock panicked at this because he didn't want Samantha to think this, because he wanted her to think that their Pokemon were in love so that he had a better chance of getting with her. So he told her that Lombre was just confused and ran toward Lombre, whispering in its ear instructions, saying that it had to return the affection to Mawile for Brock's master plan to work, which was getting with Samantha. And Brock basically says that Lombre was insane for not returning Mawile's affection, and tells him to just give love a chance, because if Lombre did, then Brock would have the chance to get with Samantha. Max overhears Brock whispering, and states that there was no way Brock's plan to actually get with Samantha would work in the first place, and called him way too desperate, and also scolds Brock for planning to use his Pokemon simply just to get with a girl. You shouldn't use your Pokemon for your own personal benefit like that. Brock ignores Max and just forcibly brings Lombre back to Mawile, apologizing to Mawile for Lombre's quote-unquote confusion, and basically forced Lombre to bow to Mawile. Ash commented that Brock should easily be able to get his Lombre to actually like Mawile. It shouldn't take that much effort to get someone to like someone else, though May denies this, saying that Ash was just thinking like a man usually would when it came to love. Basically, she was making fun of the fact that men thought that love was more simple than women did. Ash and May get into a bit of an argument, but they quickly laugh it off and shrug. Anyways, after Lombre had been forced to bow to Mawile, Mawile got happy, as it thought that Lombre did like it, and it approached it and tried to get up close to it to hug it, and tried to take Lombre's hand, but Lombre simply let go, indicating that it didn't want to be with Mawile, which made Brock angry, as he tried to discipline Lombre to get it to be with Mawile. Mawile got annoyed as fuck as well, and used its massive maw to bite Lombre, not realizing that this actually deterred Lombre from her even more, as Lombre freaked out in pain and ran behind a tree, and peeked out to see if Mawile was gone, though it wasn't. Samantha then told her Mawile that biting the Pokemon that she loved wasn't the best way to win it over, and Mawile knew that she was right. May was embarrassed on Mawile's behalf, and decided to just distract herself by looking around, and eventually she saw Samantha's backpack, and noticed a bunch of ribbons sticking out, and asked what they were for, leading Samantha to reply that her and her Mawile were performance artists, and Mawile uses the ribbons in a dance routine, simply titled the Mawile Dance Routine. May was interested in this, and asked if she could see the routine, since it reminded her of something a coordinator would do at a Pokemon contest. Samantha agreed to May's request, and she grabbed a ribbon and gave Mawile one as well, and they went back to the place where Ash and the gang had lunch at the beginning of the episode, and Ash and the gang took a seat on a log that must have fallen during a storm a bit ago, and with them comfortable sitting, it was time for Samantha to start the performance. And Mawile was more than ready to do the performance when Samantha mentioned to Mawile that it doing its ribbon act could help it win over Lombre. Lombre had to be impressed by this act. She then officially told May that they were ready, and asked that May be the one to start the music to dance to on the radio, and May obliged, playing a song by pressing the button on the radio, as Mawile and Samantha started to perform and wave ribbons in the air, dancing beautifully, even jumping and spinning while already spinning the ribbons, leaving Ash and the gang impressed as they watched intently. They weren't the only ones watching intently though, as Team Rocket was watching this performance through their binoculars from some bushes. Unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, of course. Now, usually, Team Rocket obviously wanted to steal the Pokemon, although Jessie wondered what a ribbon-twirling Pokemon, such as Mawile, would even be worth, although Meowth, of course, had an idea of why Mawile would be great for Giovanni. Jessie and James doubted this, though, so Meowth had to explain through his usual boss fantasy, and he had one, explaining that Mawile could entertain Giovanni by putting on its ribbon performance, and it could also use its maw to fan Giovanni when he was hot, and Giovanni could use Mawile as a lounge chair and a cushion for both his ass and at night. So basically he could have a really comfortable chair to sit in and a really nice pillow while enjoying a nice glass of either wine or grape juice. Probably grape juice because we're in a kids show. So Meowth's boss fantasy came to an end, and he declared that Giovanni would be so happy if he got the Mawile that he would give Team Rocket promotions, so he suggested that they capture it. James wasn't convinced that catching Mawile would be worth it, since Giovanni could just buy a fan or a cushion. He didn't have to use Mawile, but Jessie stated that they had nothing to lose in going to catch Mawile, and she was excited to actually do something aside from spying today, so she excitedly cheered, wanting to catch the Mawile, and since it was 2 against 1, James was forced to agree as well. And Wobbuffet also popped out of the Pokeball to agree. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang and Samantha and Mawile's performance had ended, and Ash and the gang all couldn't stop complimenting Samantha and her Mawile on this awesome performance, and asked if she would be performing somewhere else, and Samantha confirmed this, stating that she would be performing in the next town over. So Ash and the gang asked to come along, and Samantha permitted them to, so they were officially going to the next town over to watch Mawile and Samantha perform with an entire audience. Brock then talks to Lombre while they were all walking to the next town through the meadow, saying that Mawile's performance had to have made Lombre in love with it now, and stated that now would be a good time for Lombre to go up to Mawile and try and flirt with it and show it that it really appreciated the performance, but Lombre still didn't seem interested in Mawile, as it simply just ignored Brock. It was then that Brock happened to spot an abandoned bouquet of flowers in the middle of the road, and he rushes over to grab them, leading Lombre to follow. This was exactly what Brock wanted, because now he could just drop those flowers in Lombre's hands, and he did so, instructing Lombre to give the flowers to Mawile to show its affection for it, even though Lombre was still not interested in Mawile. As Brock was going on and on about how Lombre had to get with Mawile so that he could get with Samantha and all that, the rest of the gang and Samantha approached Brock and noticed the bouquet of flowers that Brock had picked up, and were immediately suspicious about why there would be some discarded flowers just laying in the middle of the road. Just then, though, it was revealed to be a trap placed by Team Rocket, as now that everyone was standing by the flowers, the ground happened to collapse, and Ash and the gang and Samantha and Lombre and Mawile fell in a good old pitfall trap, and Team Rocket then came down from their Meowth balloon, revealing themselves, and confirmed that this pitfall trap was theirs. Team Rocket then started to do their motto, but Meowth didn't do his part, cutting off the motto, saying that they didn't have time for it today. They might as well just take the opportunity to get Mawile and go. And Meowth excitedly activated a net by pressing a button on a remote control, and the net flew down and wrapped around Mawile, still connected to the Meowth balloon. And then Team Rocket takes Mawile's net and begins to float away into the distance in their balloon. Ash and the gang and Samantha hurriedly climb out of the pitfall trap, as Ash sends out Corphish to try and save Mawile, but Brock tells his Lombre, who was already out, to save Mawile as well, trying to convince Lombre that Mawile was his true love, although Lombre obviously didn't think so, as it just stood there, as usual, making Brock pissed off a little bit. Jessie saw that Corphish could still be a threat, though, so she sent out Seviper, but Ash simply asked Corphish to use Bubble Beam to knock Seviper back. Although Seviper was very quickly recovering, and to make matters worse for Corphish, James then sent out his Cacnea, but of course it hugged him first, prickling him, but once that was done, James had Cacnea use Pin Missile. But the Pin Missiles barely do anything, as Corphish just hardens to soften the blow, protecting itself, although Seviper then recovered and jumped towards Corphish and wrapped around it with Wrap. Since Lombre cared for its friend Corfish more so than Mawile, when Brock ordered it to help Corfish out, it did, using Razor Leaf to knock Seviper off of Corfish. So Corfish was now free. Although Seviper was angered, so he used Poison Tail on Lombre to send Lombre flying back. And then Cacnea manages to knock Corfish back with a Needle Arm. Although Corfish wasn't taken down, it was a bit tired. So Ash knew that Corfish would need a bit of time to recover, so he decided to send out a different Pokemon, and after thinking, he sent out Torkoal alongside Corfish and Lombre. Torkoal starts off with a body slam on Cacnea, knocking Cacnea straight into the ground, causing a whole bunch of dust to form, and when the dust cleared, Cacnea was momentarily knocked out, although it very quickly recovered, but it was down long enough for Torkoal to focus on Seviper, being able to dodge Seviper's Poison Tail, jumping to right beside Corfish in the process, and then using a flamethrower, pushing Seviper into the Meowth balloon. Because of Seviper's impact with the balloon, this caused the net that had Mawile in it, which was dangling from the bottom of the balloon, to start to come loose. Then Corfish recovers and uses Crab Hammer on Cacnea to send Cacnea going from the ground up into the Meowth balloon, right as Cacnea had recovered as well. And since Cacnea was so prickly, Cacnea ended up popping the Meowth balloon, sending Team Rocket blasting off. Since the net was loose from the Meowth balloon, though, when Team Rocket blasted off, the net fell to the ground, not being blasted off. So while it fell, this allowed Corfish to use its pincers to cut open the net, saving Mawile, as Corfish and Mawile hit the ground. Ash and Gang and Samantha run up to Mawile, Corfish, and Torkoal, and Samantha asks Mawile if it was alright, and once Mawile confirmed, Samantha thanks Torkoal and Corfish for saving it, leading Brock to mention to Lombre that Corfish and Torkoal were getting all the credit for saving Mawile, attempting to make it jealous by pointing out that Lombre wasn't getting any credit at all, since Lombre didn't do anything to save Mawile, and also Brock warned that Mawile may fall out of love with Lombre and fall in love with Corfish or Torkoal instead, since they could have impressed Mawile by saving her. Still, Lombre didn't seem to care at all. It was not jealous because it did not like Mawile. Corfish, upon seeing Mawile, since it didn't really get to focus on looking at her before because it was too focused on saving her, instantly fell in love with Mawile though, and rushed over to her, and spotted the bouquet of flowers that Team Rocket had left behind from earlier, and it tried to give them to Mawile. This makes Samantha laugh, flattered that Corfish liked her Pokemon, although Mawile didn't seem interested in the slightest, and nervously backed away. Ash stated that he didn't understand why Corfish would change itself just to let Mawile like him, saying that Corfish would never give anyone flowers or even care about anything else other than food, and he was shocked that Corfish would actually care for Mawile like this, leading May to reply that Ash just didn't understand love because he was a man, and even though Corfish was a male Pokemon, at least male Pokemon must have understood love for the most part, with the exception of Lombre, obviously. Despite Mawile backing away, Corfish didn't take the hint, leading May to admit that Corfish was just as dense as his trainer Ash, and Corfish had the same luck with women as Ash did. Oh, little did May know that Ash was actually the pimp. But anyways, Mawile became angry at Corfish for being so energetic and trying to just give her the flowers no matter how much she tried to refuse politely. So this led Mawile to angrily bite Corfish by clamping its maw around Corfish, who had hearts in his eyes. Although Corfish still doesn't take the hint. In fact, it seems as though it was actually attracted to getting bit by Mawile's maw. Damn, kinky. And this just made it like Mawile more. So Mawile got rid of Corfish by using its maw to send Corfish flying into the distance. As Ash in the game, especially Max, watch very uncomfortably, and Samantha tries to scold Mawile for injuring a Pokemon that worked hard to save it. Although Corfish didn't give up, and it wasn't offended at all. It was still just as in love with Mawile, and rushed back to her from all the way across the meadow. Although Corfish then got extremely depressed and literally turned to steel. At least its body felt like steel because of how much its temperature and heart dropped when it noticed that Mawile had gone up to who it really liked, Lombre, and was hugging it and holding hands with it. Well, holding hands was a bit of a stretch because Lombre was still showing no reaction. It was more so just Mawile holding on to Lombre's hand. But regardless, Corfish was still immensely depressed, and Torkoal tried to comfort it by standing next to it, although Corfish only continued to get more depressed as its bouquet of flowers then blew away in the wind. This made Corfish begin to cry. It was the last straw, and Brock then approached Corfish, telling him he felt really bad for it, because he always got rejected as well. He knew exactly how he felt, and because of this, Brock started to cry, both for himself and for Corfish as well. And as the two of them were crying, this made Ash's Torkoal somewhat sad, so it started to cry as well. Although Max and May just sighed in annoyance, not only at Corfish and Brock's crying, but at Torkoal's crying especially, because they didn't think Torkoal was actually sad, they just thought it was crying because it always happened to cry. As for Mawile, it just continued to hug Lombre, and Lombre was completely unresponsive. By dusk, Ash and the gang were shocked. They had arrived with Samantha and her Mawile to Samantha's town, where she was going to perform with Mawile, but this was far from a town. This was a goddamn city. And a large one at that, because when Ash and the gang and Samantha arrived at the stage where Samantha was going to perform, and Samantha and Mawile went backstage to prepare, and Ash and the gang sat down in the crowd was huge. There was a remarkably large audience gathered, waiting for Samantha to come on stage. While Ash and the gang waited excitedly for the performance to begin, they admired the outdoor stadium. Also, Corfish and Lombre were sitting on opposite sides of the rest of the gang, with May realizing that this was because Corfish didn't want to be near Lombre because it viewed him as his love rival, and was basically angry at him, and this was evident as Corfish gave Lombre the death glare, fucking wanting to kill it for stealing its love. Max laughed nervously upon seeing this, hoping that the reason why Corfish was not sitting next to Lombre was because it knew that it might get angry and start a fight, so it was basically being knowledgeable and wanted to avoid any fights. At least, he hoped that Corfish wouldn't start a fight. Just then, the lights on the stage go off, replaced by one singular spotlight, which an announcer steps into and then introduces Mawile and Samantha, and then his spotlight turns off once he was done, and two different spotlights turn on, revealing Mawile and Samantha respectively on stage. And the performance then began as Samantha and Mawile both had ribbons, but only Samantha could start twirling hers, as the act was then cut off when the power went out, shutting off both of the spotlights. Suddenly, the spotlights turned back on, right as Team Rocket's Meowth balloon could be seen arriving on the scene. And it was revealed that in the spotlights, now having taken Mawile and Samantha's place, were Jesse James, all in theatrical costumes, as they did a theatrical performance version of their motto. With Jesse spinning a ribbon, James juggling, and Meowth actually in the Meowth balloon up above, working the spotlight. Yeah, they weren't using the spotlights, they were actually on the stage. They truly did cut the power, but Meowth had them covered with their own spotlight. Although, after doing ribbon spinning and juggling for quite a while, Jesse accidentally wrapped the ribbon completely around her, and James messed up on his juggling. Ash and the gang, as well as the audience, all booed Jesse and James and demanded them to get the fuck off the stage, as opposed to what they did for Mawile and Samantha, which was cheer for them. And in response, Jesse and James just decided to give up on the whole theatrical idea and tear off the disguises, revealing themselves fully as Team Rocket. And they declared their plan to steal Mawile again. Upon hearing this, Samantha and Mawile leaped off of the stage as May, Ash, Max, and Brock, as well as Lombre and Corfish, ran up to join them, and demanded that Team Rocket give up those plans, although Team Rocket refused, as Jesse simply called out Viper and had to use haze to cover the entire stage and surrounding area, blinding Ash and the gang, and Samantha and Mawile and Lombre and Corfish, making them all cough, and with the haze blinding everybody, Team Rocket laughs tauntingly as they grab Mawile and escape in their Meowth balloon, which Meowth lowered down, and then they begin to fly away in their Meowth balloon as the smoke dissipates. Ash and the gang immediately panicked, thinking that Mawile was gone, but Samantha then sees that Mawile was still there. Although Ash and the gang, especially Brock, who was the first one to noticed that Team Rocket must have accidentally taken Lombre instead, because Lombre was gone. Brock screams in fear, as he wasn't used to his mons being taken by Team Rocket. While Brock was frozen in shock, though, Mawile actually takes action, scared for Lombre as well, and desperate to save the Pokemon she loved, and she runs off in the direction that Team Rocket went off to go and rescue Lombre, and Samantha follows, not wanting Mawile to get captured as well. Ash and May go to follow Samantha and Mawile as well, but Brock stops them by calling out to them, asking what should be done about the audience. They couldn't just stay there without being entertained, so May suggests that Brock stay behind and keep the audience occupied. Brock didn't want to, but before he could protest, Ash and May rushed off with Samantha and Mawile, and Max left as well. Corfish was about to go, leaving Brock alone, but right before Corfish left, Brock stopped it and begged for its help, from one romantic loser to another, and this managed to convince Corfish to stay, wanting to help its fellow person who always got rejected. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had landed in their Meowth balloon, excited to examine their catch, Mawile, because they had put their catch in a bag, so they didn't really get a chance to look at it beforehand. But of course, as soon as they landed, they saw that they didn't catch Mawile, but instead they had Lombre, and this made Team Rocket immensely depressed. Although Meowth then took Lombre out of the bag and tried to cheer himself up by having a boss fantasy of Giovanni being very grateful at Team Rocket for giving him a Lombre, if they were to give Lombre to him instead of a Mawile. But as he continued to fantasize, he realized that giving Lombre to Giovanni would be a bad idea. Such a bad idea that Giovanni may even fire them if they gave him Lombre. And basically, Meowth realized this because his fantasies involved Lombre waking Giovanni up in the morning, but just staring at him with a depressed look, making Giovanni depressed. And Giovanni would try running to get his morning run in by the beach, and Lombre would just stare at him and make him depressed then as well. And when Giovanni was trying to focus on an important business task, Lombre would just stare at him and make him depressed again. And as Meowth started to think of all this, he just ended up getting depressed, and that was the final straw that told him that giving Lombre to Giovanni would be a terrible idea. James and Jesse understood Meowth's boss fantasy, and they started to freak out, frustrated that they wouldn't be able to give Lombre to the boss, but they knew that it would be a bad idea, just like Meowth did. And then Wobbuffet forcibly popped up with the Pokeball to agree that it would be a bad idea, but upon seeing Lombre, the two of them started to have a conversation, which seemed to be not really going anywhere, or they weren't really talking about anything of value, when suddenly Wobbuffet smacked Lombre down to the ground, but Lombre didn't seem offended at all, and just got back up and continued to talk with Wobbuffet. Jesse and James were immensely confused, asking Meowth to translate if he could, but even Meowth was having trouble figuring out what Lombre and Wobbuffet were doing. But eventually, he found out that Wobbuffet was simply performing a bad stand-up routine with Lombre, but it was very bad and very unfunny, according to Meowth, and Jesse and James agreed, even if they couldn't understand what Wobbuffet and Lombre were saying, because they've seen plenty of bad comedy in their day, especially all of the puns that they would make to each other, so they could just tell they were saying unfunny shit. Actually, somewhat thankfully for them, since it meant that the bad comedy routine was interrupted, Ash, Max, May, and Samantha arrived and immediately demanded Lombre back. James and Meowth were more than willing to give Lombre back, but much to their surprise, Jessie wasn't, because even though she didn't like Lombre, that didn't mean she wanted to help out Ash and the gang by giving them Lombre back, because, you know, they were enemies and all that, so she refused to give Lombre back and sent out her Dustox to fight Ash and the gang off, and James decided to help out Jessie, not wanting Jessie to yell at him, by sending out his Cacnea, who of course prickled James first. Mawile, however, jumps in and makes the first attack, as instructed by Samantha, going in for a bite on Cacnea, and she bites it directly on the back of Cacnea's head, utilizing its big maw. Then Dustox takes the opportunity to attack Mawile with a Psybeam, but Mawile dodges by letting go of Cacnea and jumping away, although this allowed Cacnea to go in for a pin missile, but Mawile simply spins its maw rapidly to deflect the pin missile, and then Ash has Pikachu step in to help out Mawile using a Thunderbolt on Dustox, and this knocks Dustox out and directly onto Meowth, knocking Meowth over, surprising Jesse and James, and distracting them as well. So Lombre took this time to run off back to Ash, Max, May, and Samantha and Mawile, wanting to obviously escape from Team Rocket, and it actually wanted to battle Team Rocket now, because it was mad at them for capturing him, I guess. Well, Lombre was going to get its wish because it had to battle since the pin missile from Cacnea was still heading towards Mawile, and Mawile was now having trouble deflecting it, and it was about to get hit, but right before Mawile got hit, Lombre jumped in front of Mawile and shielded it from the attack. It didn't really do this because it loved Mawile or anything, it just wanted to get back at Team Rocket, but regardless, Mawile fell even more in love at Lombre because of this. Once the pin missile from Cacnea had subsided, Dustox managed to recover from the Thunderbolt and charged towards Lombre with a tackle attack, although Lombre easily dodged by ducking and tilting backwards, making Max impressed by how well Lombre could dodge. Mawile then comes out from behind Lombre and uses Focus Punch on Cacnea, sending Cacnea flying back. Dustox then tries to use a lot of poison stings at the same time on Lombre, but Lombre just runs in circles to avoid the attack, and then Ash commanded Lombre to use a water gun, and since Ash was friends with Brock, Lombre listened and used a water gun to knock Dustox back, although Dustox quickly recovered and used a whirlwind on Lombre, though Lombre simply dodged this and used a Razor Leaf, which sends Dustox flying back once again, and this just makes Mawile develop hearts in his eyes, falling even more in love with Lombre. May was amused by this, appreciating Pokemon love, while Max just wondered how Corphish would feel if it were there, since Corphish had no chance with Mawile now. He might as well forget about her, as if he had a chance with her before, though. Speaking of Corphish, it was currently helping Brock entertain the audience by doing a little performance of a Mexican song, the only one that Brock knew, which involved shaking Pokeball-designed maracas. And Corphish was getting very tired shaking the maracas on stage, but it forced itself to keep going, imagining that Mawile was there watching it, and it wanted to impress her, to take her away from Lombre. Anyways, back to the battle, and Cacnea launched another pin missile attack towards Mawile, but just like before, Lombre jumped in the way to protect Mawile, and managed to continuously deflect even more pin missiles by using Protect, which impressed Mawile even further. She was just utterly in love with Lombre at this point, especially when Lombre gave her a little wink. This didn't mean that Lombre liked her, though. He was just doing it because he liked saving people. Mawile then gets even more impressed as Ash orders Lombre to use Razor Leaf next, and Lombre does so, using Razor Leaf to blow Dustox and Cacnea back into the Meowth balloon towards Jesse and James, knocking them over. And then Mawile helps out Lombre by charging up a Solar Beam from Samantha's orders. And sure enough, Mawile charges up the Solar Beam as it gets concentrated all on her maw, and then she fires her maw forward and sends the Solar Beam straight at Team Rocket, causing a huge explosion and sending Team Rocket blasting off. Wobbuffet had been previously recalled into its Pokeball, but it even popped out as Team Rocket blasted off. Ash and May then congratulated Lombre and Mawile and each other on a battle well fought. Although Mawile didn't take any of the congratulations, as she was too focused on staring hard-eyed at Lombre, deeply in love with him more than ever after this whole ordeal. Samantha, Ash, and May then realized that they had to return to help out Brock and Corphish, who were probably really tired from performing. Sure enough, Corphish and Brock were very tired on stage from performing, and were panicking, not knowing what to do, since they'd already performed the only Mexican song they knew, and the audience was getting very tired of it, booing and complaining. So, much to Brock and Corphish's relief, when they heard Samantha, Ash, May, Max, and Mawile and Lombre arrive, they literally collapsed with relief. Seeing how exhausted Brock and Corphish were, Samantha immediately stops waving to them and runs up on stage, as Corphish and Brock manage to crawl their way off, and Mawile joins Samantha on stage, and they put on a very elegant ribbon show, just as was initially planned, jumping around and spinning the ribbons perfectly, and spinning themselves as well, as Ash and the gang watched in amazement, especially as they got to watch from backstage, while the rest of the audience just watched from the usual outside stadium area. The audience was still amazed, though, and the performance overall went very well. Anyways, backstage, Lombre was there as well, and it noticed Samantha's backpack and went up to it and started digging through it. Ash and the gang told it to stop, telling it that it wasn't polite to dig through other people's things, but it turns out that it was digging through the backpack because it sensed a water stone in the bag, and it pulled it out. Obviously, Lombre evolved into Ludicolo with a water stone, so that must have been why it was attracted to it. And sure enough, as Lombre made contact with the water stone with its hands, it started to glow and evolved into Ludicolo. Yeah, that's right, Brock now had another fully evolved Pokemon. Since Ludicolo was known for its dancing, as I'm sure you could imagine, it immediately started to dance around happily, as Ash and the gang's jaws dropped in shock at the fact that it just suddenly evolved. Ludicolo then noticed the performance with Samantha and Mawile on stage, so it leaped onto stage in the middle of Sayori and Mawile, and begins to add a special dance to the performance, trying to dance in sync with the two of them. And this actually makes the audience go wild, and it overall made the performance better. While dancing, Ludicolo noticed Mawile and actually fell in love with her. It's like something had changed in him after he evolved, although Mawile was now scared of the way Ludicolo was acting and backed away from him, even though Ludicolo was now the one with hearts in its eyes. And the dance went on for a little while longer, even as Mawile was scared, and Ash and the gang commented on how much Lombre's personality had changed. Well, Brock was kind of relieved, since now he believed he could have a shot with Samantha if Ludicolo was interested in Mawile, because he didn't pick up on the fact that Mawile was not interested in Ludicolo yet, because he was pretty dense. The performance then ended, so the audience dispersed, and Samantha talked to Ash and the gang, as Ash and the gang prepared to say their goodbyes and head out of town, since they now had no reason to be there. Although, before they left, Brock apologizes to Samantha for Lombre using her water stone, although Samantha didn't care whatsoever, as Ludicolo helped make for a great performance due to its dancing. So it was more used to her being used by Brock's Lombre into a Ludicolo than a Pokemon that she would have had, because she didn't have any Pokemon that could use it anyways. So Samantha escorts Ash and the gang to the fountain at the edge of town, although before they go, once again, Ludicolo tries to flirt with Mawile, developing hearts in its eyes once again, and this made Samantha happy that Ludicolo was finally returning Mawile's love. But as Ludicolo danced for Mawile, Mawile just turned her head and gave Ludicolo the cold shoulder, indicating that Mawile did not like Ludicolo at all anymore. Samantha asked if this was the case, and Mawile confirmed to her that she had no more interest in Ludicolo, which makes Ludicolo stop dead in its tracks in disappointment, and Brock stops in disappointment as well, realizing that if Mawile wasn't in love with Ludicolo, then he still wouldn't have a chance with Samantha. Ludicolo was in denial for a second and tried to do more dancing, but Mawile just ignored it, so Ludicolo finally gave up. Just then, Mawile notices a trainer walking with his Psyduck in the distance, and Mawile instantly falls in love with Psyduck and runs after it, and starts hugging it and developing hearts in its eyes once again as Ash and the gang stare with their mouths open wide in shock that Mawile had just totally switched up on Ludicolo. Not only did it not like Ludicolo, but it liked someone else. Samantha just laughed though, explaining that Mawile changed crushes all the time and she would never change, and stated that all her past crushes have been absent-minded and dumb like Psyduck and Lombre, so she thought that that was all that Mawile would ever go for, and that was precisely why Mawile didn't like Ludicolo anymore, since it wasn't really absent-minded, it was just freaky. Samantha then officially says goodbye to Ash and the gang as she runs over to Mawile to stop it from going too rough on Psyduck with her maw. With Samantha gone, Brock saw that Ludicolo was still sad about Mawile not liking it, and tries to comfort Ludicolo, but Ludicolo quickly gets over its rejection and starts dancing happily, launching a bullet seed, surprising everyone. As Brock saw the bullet seeds going everywhere, although he was still sad about not being able to get with Samantha, he quickly cheered up, and his tears turned to tears of happiness, seeing how Ludicolo had quickly got over its rejection, and he got inspired to get over his rejection, and decided to cheer himself up by dancing and jumping in the air with Ludicolo, as May, Max, and Ash watched, happy that Brock may have a way to get over rejection now, thanks to Ludicolo. Although Brock and Ludicolo danced for a long time, so May, Max, and Ash had to take a seat at the fountain until they were done. And once this was done, they continued on their journey to Sutopolis City.